So when it comes to a difficult decision, I will look for opportunities to confront wrongs at the right time and in the right way. Trusting God does not mean I'm passive. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do something. And here he confronts him. I want you to notice the steps that David took. David took the first step to confront Saul. He humbled himself before Saul. So 1 Samuel 24 is where we're at today. As you can see at the top of the outline, if you have it, if you have your bulletins open, you can see that I've entitled the message today, Making Difficult Choices. We all have choices that we make on a day-to-day basis. Some are more simple than others, you know. You get up in the morning, you decide, do I want Bran Flakes or Honey Nut Cheerios? That's a choice we make, right? We make a choice on the direction we're going to come to the church. How are we going to get here? That may appear to be a simple choice. We have choices that we make that are very simple, like what we're going to wear. There's not really anything that we need to make real complicated about that. I know sometimes it could be a stressful situation for people, but those are real easy, simple choices. You're going to leave here today, you're going to decide where to eat, or if you're going to go home and eat. Those are all simple choices. And then we have times in our life where we have very, very difficult, profound, hard choices to make. Maybe a move, maybe a career change, maybe a decision on how, one of the hardest choices for me when my kids were at home was how to discipline them, how to correct my kids, how to interact with my kids. There are a lot of difficult choices that we make, and this is really the emphasis of this particular chapter, because David is faced with an incredibly difficult choice, because it looks like that an opportunity has been placed in front of him that's too hard to turn down. And so what we see in this chapter is how he kind of walks through that. He makes a decision one way or the other. He makes a decision, I believe, the right way. And how did he kind of go about that process? How did he go about making that decision? Well, let's read about this story, and then we'll just walk through the points as we go through the text, okay? Let's begin reading in verse number 1. Now it happened when Saul had returned. Remember that he had David trapped, and then the Philistines came and attacked the land, which we saw was not an act of just randomness, but it was the sovereignty of God at work protecting David. He goes, and it doesn't say whether or not he actually won the battle or beat the giant. It just said, or beat the Philistines. It just says that he came back from the battle. So either they won or lost, but we know that the battle is over. So a period of time has gone from verse number 29 of chapter 23 to now verse number 1 of 24. So he returns. So what does he go back to doing? Well, what he was doing before, which was the pursuit of David, and he wants to kill David. So it says, it was told him, saying, "Take note, David is in the wilderness of En-Gedi." Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men from all Israel and went to seek David and his men on the rocks of the wild goats. So what he does is he takes the elite of the elite. He takes the, I guess I better be careful here because there's a lot of military people in here about saying who's the elite of the elite. But I'll let you decide in your mind who the elite of the elite is. And we'll just say that he took those with him, and so he takes the best of the best, and he's going to go get David. Verse 3, so he came to the sheepfolds by the road where there was a cave. And I love how the King James, or the New King James puts this, and Saul went in to attend to his needs. Okay, that is a simple way of saying that duty called. Okay, he's using the restroom, if I can be blunt, okay? So, they don't have porta potties and they don't have indoor plumbing at this particular time. So he goes in to take care of his needs. Well, he just happens to go into the cave that David and his men are hiding in. And that's what it says at the end of verse 3. David and his men were staying in the recesses of the cave. Now, these caves are massive. You got to understand this. At this time, David has 600 men. If you go to Israel with us next year, we will go to En-Gedi and we will go in these caves, and they are massive caves. So sometimes you need to kind of get that picture in your mind of this. You have this massive cave and you have 600 guys hiding out in there, And so here comes Saul in to take care of business. All right, verse 4. Then the men of David said to him, "This is the day of which the Lord said to you, behold, I will deliver your enemy into your hand." So you got to understand that Saul brings his 3,000 men with him, but there is something very intimate about going to the restroom. You do not do it together with people. All right, so it looks like that here is Saul wanting the ultimate privacy, right? Which is, I'm going to go in and take care of business. I don't want any of you to go in with me. This is a very private thing. And so he goes in there by himself. There's no guards with him. They're all outside the cave. He's alone. And so they see him coming in. Their eyes are adjusted to the darkness of the cave. There is light coming in, and Saul walks in, and they spot him immediately. They spot him by his wardrobe. They spot him by what he's wearing. This is King Saul, by his demeanor. We know that he was particularly tall. So they knew right away who this was. They knew that this was Saul. So the men say to him, "Hey, David, this is your chance to take the throne. This is God allowing this to happen." All right? And that's really what they're saying to him. This is the day of which the Lord said to you, behold, I will deliver your enemy into your hands, that you may do to him as it seems good to you. So these 600 guys are sick and tired of going from cave to cave, or running from Saul, living this nomad type life. They want to go back home. They want to settle down. And they know that it will not happen until David is the king. And so they see Saul come in, and they're like, this is your chance. This is your opportunity. This is your moment. Seize this moment. God has placed this in front of you as an opportunity for you to take the throne. And the interesting word is it says in the last part of verse 4, and David arose. So he's actually being persuaded to action by these men. Now, I think he arose to actually kill Saul. He was going to do what they were telling him to do. But as he gets closer to Saul, God really works on him, and he stops from doing it. Because he obviously has his sword out, and he's going to do what these men have persuaded him to do. So this leads us to our first point. And I want you to understand, I think, what the text is saying here. I've entitled it Making Difficult Choices, some rules to live by when facing difficult choices. Number one, I will not be pressured by anyone to do anything. So when it comes to making choices, I will not be pressured by anyone to do anything. Remember when we thought that peer pressure was just a teenage problem? Isn't that kind of funny? So you've been somewhere a long time as a pastor when you remember the day that kids were born and you now watch them graduate. And so last night we went to a party of Steven Anderson, who's a kid that I remember when he was born, and now I'm going to see him graduate. And so we were talking last night, Steven and I were talking, and he was saying, I remember when I was real little, and I would come up to you, and because the upper building, we were in the upper building, and he was probably 5 or 6 at the time, and he said, we used to have, you got to understand that we had every part of every building we've ever had has been multi-purpose. So, so the kitchen is half kitchen, half office. It used to be up there. So we used to have a computer up there. And Stephen would come up to me, and he's really into computer games and video games. And he says, I remember I'd ask you, can I use the church's computer to play some kind of game? And so he would ask me to do that. He goes, I wouldn't even dream of doing that now. And I said, isn't it awesome, the courage of young kids, of a child? When you're a child, man, you got no fear. What do? We learn fear, don't we? We learn it over time. When kids are young, they're not intimidated. But as we get older, people say, well, you can't play computer games on the church's computer? So we kind of get pressured into a certain lifestyle or a certain way or certain actions. And this is how we live our life, is people are pushing us directions, and you need to do this, and you need to do that. And this is kind of how we spend our lives, is just being pushed. And a lot of times we're doing the exact opposite of what we know God wants us to do, but we're just getting pressure from other people. A lot of adults, man, cave into peer pressure, big time. And I'm the chiefest of sinners. Man, I wish we'd do church this way. Okay, we'll do it next week. Will you not leave, please? Right? I mean, I thought it would get easier. It's gotten harder as I've gotten older. And sometimes I have lived too much of my life doing what everybody else wanted me to do. Doing what everybody else pushed me to do. And this is David. David is like, hey, yeah, I need to kill him. And I think a good rule to live by is, I will not be pressured by anyone to do anything. You're not going to make me do something that I know is against the Word of God. You're not going to make me do something that is against my beliefs or against my convictions. But we just live in this age where we just put our finger in the air and we see which way the wind's blowing and which way people are pushing us. You know, it's okay to swim upstream. It's okay to go against the grain. We don't have to be like everybody else. In fact, Christians shouldn't be like everybody else. There should be a marked difference about us. We're different than the culture. We're different than the people around us. Not in a weird way, but just in a way of, look, I don't have to like that just because you say I should like it. I love people when everybody else says, oh, man, that was good. They say, it wasn't good to me. That's okay to be that way. But we're just David even is kind of giving in to the peer pressure. He's giving in to the pressure of his men. And you understand the pressure of his men. Man, I'm tired of this life. I mean, who in the room wants to live in a cave? Who wants to go back home? Who wants things to be normal? Who wants to be around their family? I mean, I want things to change. And this is his men have an agenda. And this is their agenda. And their agenda is, man, I want this to be over. And so they want to push David ahead of God. And he starts to feel the pressure. But notice what he does. Instead of killing him, he secretly cuts off a corner of Saul's robe. Now it happened afterward that David's heart troubled him because he had cut Saul's robe. So he probably doesn't have the robe on. He probably takes the robe off. And he sets it off to the side. So David's going to go over there and kill him. He grabs part of the robe. He cuts that piece off. And it's like the minute he does it, man, he's like, that was a bad move. That was wrong. So 2, if I'm making a difficult choice, I will listen to my conscience and the voice of God above all others. I will listen to my conscience and the voice of God above all others. So what's the difference between the two? Well, conscience is you were raised by parents. You were raised by a mother or a father or both, and they taught you certain principles. They taught you a certain way to live. They taught you, hopefully, between right and wrong. All right? And so conscience is kind of this mindset that's kind of been drilled into us from our youth. This is how you treat people. This is how you live your life. This is how you don't lie, you don't steal, you're honest with people. And what happens to us is we have this conscience that's not only what people teach us, but also God-given. So there is a God-shaped vacuum in everyone that can only be filled by Christ, all right? But God also, the Bible says that God writes His words in our heart. So not only there's a certain way I was raised, but also God kind of puts things in our heart that this is the right way and the wrong way to live. It's very hard to find someone that argues for murder. That is, it doesn't matter whether you're a Christian or a non-Christian, whether you're a follower of Jesus or not. It's hard to find people that say murder's good. Now, where'd that come from? That come from a God-shaped conscience. That comes from something that God put in our hearts. But then you take it up even another level. If you're a child of God, you have God the Holy Spirit inside of you. So the day I got saved, I believe that I received the gift of the Holy Spirit. God the Holy Spirit moved in to my heart or moved into my life. And one of the purposes of God the Holy Spirit is to teach us the Bible. How many of you have this entire book memorized? Okay. How many of you understand this entire book? It can be very, very confusing, can it? It can be very difficult to understand. God the Holy Spirit teaches us His Word a lot of times that we don't even know about it yet. So what happens is I'm talking to somebody and I lie to them, and God the Holy Spirit says, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have lied. Now I have a choice. How am I going to respond to that conviction? And what a lot of people do is, and this is why I think a lot of people are miserable, they don't deal with it. They just push it down. Well, I just says, I think it was the pizza I ate last night. It wasn't the Holy Spirit. You know, you ever said something really hateful to somebody because you got in the flesh and you got in the moment? Man, you lashed out at them. And I mean, you walked away from them and you're like, I blew it. Okay, what should I do then? I should turn around and try to make things right, which we're going to talk about that in a minute. I should seek to make things right. But a lot of times we justify when we've done something wrong. We say, well, they deserved it. You know, this is what we tend to do. And so David sees Saul as God's anointed king, and he is not going to be the one that's going to mess with this king, because God placed him there, and God will remove him when it's his time, and he's not going to be any part of taking Saul down. He has the ultimate respect for Saul, even though Saul's trying to kill him. He's like, this is God's man in God's place, and I'm not going to be the one that takes him out. And he, in some cases, violently defends Saul. Why? Because he's driven by his conscience and the voice of God. He's listening to those above all others. So you got 600 guys in his ear, kill him, kill him, kill him. He goes over, cuts off his robe, part of his robe, and he's like, man, that was wrong. Because I'm messing with God's anointed. So, man, when it comes to a choice, block out all other noise and listen to the voice of God, because He will speak to you. He will speak to you. So what happens then? Verse 5. Now it happened afterward that David's heart troubled him. I read that. Verse 6. And he said to his men, the Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, to stretch out my hand against him, seeing he is the anointed of the Lord. Kind of got ahead of myself, so I'll give you point number 3. I will not achieve the purposes of God by breaking the commands of God. I will not achieve the purposes of God by breaking the commands of God. So, you know, there's an old saying, it's never right to do wrong in order to make things right. So, things need to be done in God's way and in God's time. Now, why do we hate that? Because we're impatient, aren't we? We live in America. Things get done here. We don't wait around. We push things through. Do you understand that our culture and our society is moving really fast? Sometimes God's moving really slow. So what do I got to do? Get in line. Now, what do we like to do when we're standing in a line that's not moving very fast? Complain, whine, like that's going to make the line move faster. I guarantee you, if you want to be slowed down anywhere in this city, you get behind me. because I cannot pick the lines that move quickly to save my life. Like, I'm going to tell you a pet peeve of mine. Like, I can't stand these restaurants, not, I don't even call them restaurants, but these fast food places that have 2 drive-thrus and you have to merge, right? So, man, yeah, I get behind this person, they're ordering everything on the menu, they're doing a special order, and then somebody's over in this line, they're just bloop, 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 and then, so then I shift, and then there's a glitch, and then I get stuck because I want to move to this line. Does anybody else do this, or am I the only one in the room? Now, why do I do that? Because I get impatient. So I want to make things happen. And we tend to do this not only in our physical life, but we tend to do this in our spiritual life. David's like this. Moses gave us a law, and that law was, don't murder. I'm not going to break the law that God said to do to get the kingdom, which I know is promised to me. And this is a mistake that we all make. It was the will of God that David be the next king. It was not the will of God that David get the kingdom by killing Saul himself. What David is saying is, God's going to put me on the throne when it's my time, but I'm not going to make it happen. So, you want a promotion. It is not the will of God for you to undercut the person in front of you, to lie about them or slander them or manipulate them just to get above them. God will promote you in His time and in His way. You just be faithful to God. Is there anybody in the Bible that got this better than Joseph? Remember when Joseph was a boy, he had a dream. And what was the dream that God gave him? That one day his family would bow down before him. Do you think when he was sitting in a jail in Egypt, he was like, I don't really see how this is part of the plan? Do you think he kind of scratched his head and wanted to know what was going on? I sure would have. But what did he do? God had a plan, right? He had got to put him in Potiphar's house. He's got to be sold into slavery once. Then he's got to get in Potiphar's house. He's got to be falsely accused. He's got to get stuck in this jail. He's got to be forgotten by the butler and the baker. And then at the opportune time and in the opportune place, God gave Pharaoh a dream, made them remember, oh, there's a kid in prison that interprets dreams, and he became second in command in all of Egypt. I don't see any manipulation, scheming, stabbing, pulling down. He trusted God's plan and God's time. And this is how we have to be. I will not achieve the purposes of God by breaking the commands of God. I will not hate my neighbor to advance my career. I will love my neighbor because that's what God tells me to do, right? Are y'all with me this morning? I know this isn't maybe popular, and that's not what culture says, but it's God's way. All right, number 4. So what happens? So David restrained his servants with these words. Because can you hear some of them? Well, if you ain't going to do it, I'm going to do it. So number 4, I will not encourage others to do what I will not do. I think that's an important line. I will not encourage others to do what I will not do. So a lot of times people are like, well, I would never do that because God doesn't want me to do it, but if, wink, wink, but if you want to do it, that'd be all right. Like, I'll never slander this person, but if you want to, we all know it's the truth about him. See, sometimes we're passive aggressive. You understand what it means to be passive aggressive, right? We had a guy who came here for years and years. He was passive aggressive towards me when I would preach. You know, in ways that he would interact with me when I was preaching. It was very hard not to look at the guy. Because he was making a statement, like most of you are making a statement by how you're listening. You want to hear, but he was making a statement by, he didn't like what I was saying. So it's just like, look at the friendly faces, look at the friendly faces, look at the, right? But this tends to be how we are. We tend to we tend to be passive aggressive. So we won't do it, but we'll manipulate others to do what we won't do. That's not right. I should keep others from doing what I will not do myself. And that's what David's doing. So when a difficult decision needs to be made, I will not encourage others to do what I will not do. So let's read on. We got to move quickly here, okay? Verse 8. So verse 7. David restrained his soldiers with these words and did not allow them to rise against Saul. And Saul got up from the cave and went on his way. David also arose afterwards, went out of the cave and called out to Saul. Now, Karen and I were having this discussion this morning coming in. Do you think like he was here for me to mark? Or I think he had gotten a good distance away. Enough where that he felt safe. So he comes out of the cave and he calls him out and he says, David arose out of the cave and called out to Saul saying, "My lord the king." And when Saul looked behind him, David stooped with his face to the earth and bowed down. What? So he's showing David the reverence of his office. Or Saul, I'm sorry, the reverence. David is showing Saul the reverence of his office. So he bows down, and David said to Saul, "Why do you listen to the words of men who say," and isn't that interesting that he said that? Why do you listen to the words of men? Why was that important? Because he had just not listened to the words of his men. He goes, "You're letting a bunch of people make you paranoid about me. Nobody loves you more than I do," is in a sense what he's saying. Why are you letting all these people get in your ear and tell you stuff about me that's not true? This is what David's saying to Saul. And he says, "Why do you listen to the voice of the men who say, 'Indeed, David seeks your harm'? Look, this day your eyes have seen that the Lord delivered you today into my hand in the cave, and someone urged me to kill you, but my eyes spared you, and I said, I will not stretch out my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. Moreover, my father, see the corner of your robe in my hand, for in that I cut off the corner of your robe and did not kill you. Know and see that there is neither evil nor rebellion in my hand, and I have not sinned against you, yet you hunt me to take my life. Let the Lord judge between you and me, and let the Lord avenge me on you. But my hand shall not be against you. As the proverb of the ancient says, wickedness proceeds from the wicked, but my hand shall not be against you." Number 5. What I do when facing difficult decisions. I will look for opportunities to confront wrongs at the right time and in the right way. Now, a lot of people say, well, you're talking about trusting God. And okay, trusting God does not mean I'm passive. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do something. And here, he confronts him. I want you to notice the steps that David took. David took the first step to confront Saul. He humbled himself before Saul in verse number 8. He honored Saul. He said, look, okay, you're in a position of authority. You're the anointed of God. I'm going to honor you. He spoke the truth concerning the situation. There is a time where we need to stand up, and it may be a choice that we have to make to stand up and speak against error. But there's a right time and a right place and a right way. He's doing it in the right way. So he spoke the truth in verses 9 through 11 about the situation. He's saying, you have people in your ear that are trying to get you to make me your enemy. I'm not your enemy. I'm your friend. He declared his own guilt in the sense that he said, look, I cut off your robe and I shouldn't have done that. I was out of line. He committed himself to doing the right thing in verses 12 and 13. He says, I'm telling you right now, Saul, as long as you're alive, you're not going to die by my hand. You're going to die, but it ain't going to be by my hand. And then he placed his case in the hand of the judge of the universe in verses 12 through 15. And that's what he says in verse 14. After whom has the king of Israel come out? Whom do you pursue? A dead dog, a flea? Therefore let the Lord be judge, and judge between you and me, and see and plead my case, and deliver me out of your hand. He goes, I'm trusting God to take care of me. So when it comes to a difficult decision, I will look for opportunities to confront wrongs at the right time and in the right way. So then what happens? So then Saul speaks back to David, verse 16. So it was, when David had finished speaking these words to Saul, that Saul said, is this your voice, my son David? So you can tell there's a little distance between them. And Saul lifted up his voice and wept. Then he said to David, you are more righteous than I, for you have rewarded me with good, whereas I have rewarded you with evil. And you have shown this day how you have dealt well with me. For when the Lord delivered me into your hands, you did not kill me. For if a man finds his enemy, will he let him get away safely? Therefore may the Lord reward you with the good you have done to me this day. And now this is very important. And now I know indeed that you shall surely be king. It's the first time we ever see Saul acknowledge it. I know you're the next king. I know that you'll be king, and the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hands. Therefore, swear now to me by the Lord that you will not cut off my descendants after me, and that you will not destroy my name from my father's house. So what's he saying? I know you're going to be the next king. Please don't wipe out my family when you come into power. Which we know that that's not going to happen. Why? Because he's already committed to Jonathan that he's going to take care of his family, of Jonathan and his family. And he knows that Jonathan would like to serve with David in the kingdom. So number 6. I've got a difficult choice. I need to do what David did, which is number 6. I will always err on the side of grace. I will always err on the side of grace. A very American mentality is people need to get what they deserve. Want justice. Okay, let me just tell you this. You do not want the justice of God on your life. Because the justice of God on your life is death in hell. That's what I justly deserve. I am 48 years old. And for 48 years of my life, I have snubbed my nose at God more often than I care to admit. And at the end of the day, what I deserve is God to snub his nose at me. God to punish me for my rebellion to him. But that's not how God operates. Amen? See, there's 3 ways I can deal with people. One is what I call the demonic level. Like I return, somebody does me good and I respond to that good with evil. Somebody opens their home to me and I steal from them. That would be responding to good with evil. That's demonic. That's satanic. Okay? Then there's the human level. That is, you're good to me, I'm good to you. You're evil to me, I'm evil to you. That's human, right? I mean, that's what we all do. People that are good to us, we're good to them. People that are kind to us, we're kind to them, or we should be. But people that are evil to us, man, we repay them in kind. You know, we believe in the eye for eye and a tooth for a tooth, man. That's human. But then there's the divine level. And that's good for evil. And that's what David did to Saul, didn't he? Would every one of us in this room, if David killed Saul, would have said, got what he deserved? Is there anybody in the room that would disagree? How many times has Saul tried to kill him? Remember with the spear? Twice at least. Now he spent all this time chasing him. He's tried to kill him. All right, so we could all make a great case that he's just acting in what? Self-defense. But what does he do? He shows him grace. I was talking to a pastor the other day, one of our pastors in our church, and he made this statement. That's why I wrote it down. and it really applied to this. He goes, when it comes to situations, I always, if I'm going to err, I want to err on the side of grace. And I don't want people to look at me and say, you know what, man, he really stuck it to me and I didn't deserve it. I want people to look at me and say, you know what, that guy was much kinder to me than I ever deserved. Isn't grace a beautiful thing? Isn't mercy a beautiful thing we sang about today? Aren't you glad you're not going to get what you deserve? Now, should there be punishments? Absolutely. Should there be discipline and correction? And should we have jails? And should we incarcerate people? Yes. I'm not arguing against that. I'm just saying, let's not get caught up in they must get everything they deserve, because we're not going to get everything we deserve. The more important thing is, what does God say? So when that person comes to you, let me just back it up even more. When that person who has wronged you never asks for forgiveness, you forgive them anyway. Isn't that not what our Lord Jesus did? Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Know what that's called? Grace. You know what you need a whole lot of by a whole lot of other people? Grace. Because I didn't know all of you when you were little, but I know every little kid, and they're all brats. Right? And what'd your parents do to you when you were a brat? Well, they may have spanked you, but they gave you a whole lot of grace, didn't they? They corrected us. And this is what I was always confused as a child. My dad would spank me and then hug me. It's like, this is weird. That's called, I'm correcting you because this is, if you continue down this path, it's going to bring you a lot of pain. But I want you to know that I love you more than you can ever understand. And I'm not going to kick you out of the house. Aren't you glad we ain't in Old Testament rules, right? Yeah. I mean, Old Testament, man, you backtalk your parents, you stoned. I wouldn't have one member of my church. Nor would you have a pastor. So what do we got to do? What do we got to do with all people? Err on the side of grace. And God's used my wife to really help me with this a lot. You know, you go to a restaurant and you order something, the waiter or waitress is, and she says, you know, maybe they're just having a bad day. They need to serve me better. I'm going to leave them 0 tip with notes. Maybe what your waiter or waitress needs today is not less tip, but more tip. It's called grace, man. It's like, look, I don't know what's going on in your life, but you're obviously hurting. So I want to be a blessing to you today. Now let me finish with this. Number 7. I will only give God unconditional trust. Now I think this is an important line in the last here. So I want to show everybody grace, but when it comes to trust, I only want to give God unconditional trust. And that's found in verse 22. So, man, David's heard a lot of good stuff from Saul, right? I know you're going to be the next king. Please take care of my family. That sounds like pretty sincere stuff. So you would think David and his men would haul it back home. Wouldn't you? But what does 22 say? So David swore to Saul, and Saul went home. Where did David go? And David and his men went to the strongholds. That verse right there tells me a lot. So it means David said, I hear you, but I don't trust you. Let me just give you some illustrations. So you have an abusive husband. You have left the home because your husband has been abusive. You're separated now. You're living in different places. Your husband comes to you and says, I'm sorry. I understand the error of my way. I went to church, Topeka Baptist. God spoke to my heart. I want to make things right. Okay? I wouldn't move in tomorrow. Showing people grace doesn't mean that I completely trust them. Humans are humans. So trust is earned. So wait. It's okay to wait. You have a business partner. That business partner has stolen from you. He may come to you because God convicts his heart and says, look, I was wrong. I blew it. I would not necessarily go in another agreement with him. We just need to use wisdom in our life, right? And I think that's what David's doing. David's like, okay, let's wait a little bit. We don't have to. Nothing has to change tomorrow. We know that David forgave him. We know that David showed him grace, but we also know that he said, okay, I want to see some proof. And I don't think that's a bad thing to do. I think to give somebody unconditional trust other than God can be a catastrophic mistake. We are all to forgive, but trust is never commanded in the Bible except to trust God. So look, I throw you the keys to my car and you go wreck my car. You come back to me and Pastor Mark, I wrecked your car. I'd probably go, yes, get a new one. So, but if, and were you injured? No? Okay, yes. So I will forgive you for wrecking my car, but I'm probably not going to let you drive my new one for a while. And I think there's a certain wisdom in that, right? It's hard making hard decisions, isn't it? So I think we can learn from David. I will not be pressured by anyone to do anything. Man, I will listen to my conscience and the voice of God above all others. I will not achieve the purposes of God by breaking the commands of God. I will not encourage others to do what I will not do. I will look for opportunities to confront wrongs at the right time and in the right manner. I will always err on the side of grace. And I will only give God unconditional trust. If you're here today and you feel weighed down with the guilt of sin, you have a God that offers you great mercy and offers you grace and offers you salvation. And you know what he says? Whosoever will may come. That if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in thy heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. That's a great promise. And not because you deserve it, because none of us in the room deserve it, but Jesus Christ, 2,000 years ago, hung on a cross and bore the weight of your sin. And he took the wrath of God that I deserve for my rebellion against God, Jesus Christ took on the cross for me. And he says, if you'll just believe in me, you can have everlasting life. And he offers that to you today. Not because you're a good person, not because you deserve it, but because you have a gracious God. He responded to your sin with grace. He responded to your transgressions with mercy. And he just says, come to me. Believe in me. And I want to challenge you, if you're here today and you've never done that, would you do that right now? Let's go to the Lord in prayer. With our heads bowed, if you've never given your life to Jesus, would you, just in your seat where you are, would you acknowledge that you're a sinner? Acknowledge the fact that you have rebelled against God. Acknowledge the fact that you have sinned against God and you deserve the punishment of God. But today, you're going to accept the free gift of salvation that is offered to you by Jesus Christ. So pray something like this. Lord, I know that I'm a sinner. I know that I deserve the punishment for my sins. But today I believe in Jesus. Today I put my faith and trust in Jesus Christ. I believe that he lived on this earth, that he died on the cross for my sins, and that he rose from the dead. Today I trust in him and him alone to save me. Please come in my life and make me a new person. If you have already prayed that prayer and you've already made a decision for Christ, how are you doing in your decisions? How are you treating others around you? You giving them what they give you? Are you showering them with the mercy of God that God has given you? Father, I thank you today for this time we've had to study your word. What a powerful passage of Scripture. I know, Lord, that with my heart that I probably would have run Saul through. I probably would have killed the man because I'm tired of the pain that I'm experiencing. But thank you for David, who is a picture of that coming Christ, who did not give Saul what he deserves, but gave him what he needed, which was grace and mercy. So, Lord, as we leave this place today and as we go interact in our community and our jobs, may we be people of grace. May we show grace at the restaurant today. May we show grace at our work tomorrow. May we show grace with our neighbors and with our friends. May we be a people of grace, Lord. Thank you for modeling it to us, Lord. And thank you for giving us David, who points us to you. Help us to live it as we leave. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you again for listening to our series on 1 Samuel with Pastor Mark Dawes. If you have questions about today's message, please contact our church office at info@topekabaptist.org. Give us a call at 785-862-0988 or check us out online at www.topekabaptist.org.